Welcome to Driven to Success. Today we kick off part one of a very special conversation with NHRA Top Fuel driver Clay Millican. Clay's story is pure passion, from growing up in a small Tennessee grocery store to becoming one of the fastest men on earth. In this first episode, you'll hear about the spark that started it all, his first cars, and the unforgettable and a little embarrassing story of his first Top Fuel burnout. Let's jump right in.
From the time I rolled out, Mama and Daddy said that I had one obsession, and it was cars and going fast. And my daddy was a drag racer. I grew up in a tiny little grocery store in Drummonds, Tennessee. So growing up in that tiny little store, I learned a lot of things. I mean, really, I learned pretty much everything. But the biggest thing I heard all the time was, how fast Daddy's car was. Daddy did this, Daddy did that. And he also took us to every kind of a motorsport you can imagine. And I mean everything from sprint cars, NASCAR, hill climbs, tractor pulls. But when I was a little bitty guy, he took me to Lakeland Dragway, and I saw for the first time ever that I remember is a guy named Big Daddy Don Garlits, and he was match racing Ron Booker, which he was billed as the world's fastest big block Chevrolet. And man, the hook was absolutely set at that point. I just got beat on a hole shot by a young, good-looking kid named Justin Ashley in the final round of the race at Summit Motorsports Park. And I'm still smiling. And you know what? Because I got to drive a race car today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Driven to Success. We've got an exciting episode today with our special guest, Clay Millican. Of course, my cohort out there, Vic Teresic with Shop Owner Coach, and then myself, David Wofford with the Pronto Network. So to jump right into it, really wanted to put Clay on the spotlight, and he has got such a unique experience in being a Top Fuel driver and really some of the things that we talk about on the show is kind of jumping way back in time. And it's really, Clay, how did you even get started into this industry? And I don't know if you even call it an industry when you're having as much fun as you're having right now. But how did you get started into racing?
Well, I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. From the time I rolled out, Mama and Daddy said that I had one obsession, and it was cars and going fast. And my daddy was a drag racer, but I don't remember it. He stopped before I was born. But I grew up in a tiny little grocery store in Drummonds, Tennessee, and it is literally just like eighth of a mile right over there. I can look out the window and see they're not with us anymore, and the store's now closed, but my nephew actually lives there, so it's still in the family. So growing up in that tiny little store, I learned a lot of things. I mean, really, I learned pretty much everything. But the biggest thing I heard all the time was, how fast Daddy's car was. Daddy did this, Daddy did that. And he also took us to every kind of a motorsport you can imagine. And I mean everything from sprint cars, NASCAR, hill climbs, tractor pulls. But when I was a little bitty guy, and I've got just vague memories of this, he took me to Lakeland Dragway, which is not far from Memphis, Tennessee. And I saw for the first time ever that I remember is a guy named Big Daddy Don Garlits, and he was match racing Ron Booker, which he was billed as the world's fastest big block Chevrolet. And man, the hook was absolutely set at that point. I was like, I don't know how and I don't know when, but I want to drive one of those cars. And I mean, of course, the rest of it is life story that we can kind of get into. But, I didn't come with a silver spoon, a golden spoon. When I say a tiny little grocery store, I mean a tiny little grocery store. Mom and Daddy kept us fed, kept a roof over our head, but we weren't rolling around with money in our pockets. And to be honest, the industry I'm in, that's a big part of it, is finding those dollars.
Absolutely. So I would imagine, based on what you just told us, your first car, you were probably piecemealing that one together, right?
Well, my first car was a truck.
Okay.
Daddy had a 63 Dodge with a 318 poly engine. I'm kind of getting in the weeds there a little bit, but it's not your standard 0318 like what we think of us. At least the group that's on here, I'm assuming, I'm okay to call us old guys because we are old guys.
Yes,
But
you
it's a
are.
318 poly engine, 318 with 3-speed on the column.
Yep.
So in the passenger side, you could look at the floorboard and see the dirt. Had some holes in the floorboards, but he gave me that truck and a spot in our backyard to make circles. You would have thought that I wanted to grow up and be a sprint car driver, being as how I grew up watching Hooker Hood and Sammy Swindell over at West Memphis, Arkansas. And I made a bazillion laps with that 63 Dodge truck. That's for sure. And we eventually had a car broken down in the store parking lot, stayed there for a week probably. And it was a 69 Dodge Charger,
Ooh.
green, and it had a bent front fender. It had definitely been in a fender bender. And somehow I convinced this guy that he needed my 63 Dodge truck, and I traded with him. And I now have a 69 Dodge Charger with a 383. And, this is, oh man, I don't know, I'm 14, 15 years old. And at some point in my 15th year on this planet, Daddy, myself, my best friend in the world, JC Metters, we all went to Jackson Dragway. Pull in the gate there in Jackson Dragway. Never been to a drag strip with our own vehicle to race. I hadn't. And they were like, "What are you signing up for?" "Well, what's the fastest class you got?" Well, they said, "Well, it's Super Pro." We're like, "Well, that's what we're in. We got a 69 Charger with a 383. We got the fastest thing on the planet." And they have something at the drag strip that will bring you back to reality, and it's called a time slip. So after I got my first time slip, that was handwritten, by the way, and it was dropped in a tube from the top of the tower down this tube to a box. And you had to go over there and dig through it, find your car number. So once I got that time slip, I had to make my way back to the pit gate and re-enter myself in the pro class because I was definitely not a super pro at that point. But that was my first introduction of not driving up and down the road here in Drummonds, Tennessee, and actually on a drag strip. And man, the ball was rolling at that point because all I wanted to do was go faster and faster and faster. And it's been a lifetime of it, but we've been going fast.
So that was your transition from dirt track in the
backyard, yeah,
to the straight line, and you prefer to go straight.
I love wheeling. I really do. If I got a steering wheel in my hand, I'm happy. But man, there's just something about going fast. And obviously, there's nothing faster on this planet that is piston driven than a Top Fuel dragster. So man, I was dead set on trying to figure out how to duplicate what I saw Big Daddy Don Garlits do there in Lakeland Dragway. And man, I married my high school sweetheart. I'm going to move forward just a few years, not many, to be honest with you. I was just talking about 15 going to the drag strip for the first time, but married my high school sweetheart 1 year out of high school, and had a normal job. I worked at the Kroger food warehouse. I couldn't seem to get out of the food business there for a little while because I grew up in a grocery store and went to work for a grocery store. And which is really dumb for a guy that wants to go racing every weekend because, as we all know, grocery stores don't close. I worked at the Kroger food warehouse for 11 years, and I was off on Christmas one time, and that was because my off day fell on Christmas. And needless to say, I stayed in a lot of trouble from missing days from going to the races, but I just kept going.
So you played hooky.
A lot. A lot.
Well, that was going to be my question.
I might as well add a little bit to that. So this year, I will have been married 40 years, and we have never, ever taken a vacation that did not have a race car attached to it in some form or fashion. And I have been all over the world, but somehow, some way, it had something to do with racing. It might be a sponsor event, which David, me and you've been to a lot of those together. Or, maybe it's a convention, in Hawaii, which I did a couple times. But it always had a race car involved somehow, some way. And it's never been, hey, baby, let's take a vacation and not have race cars. But it's what we do. We're racers.
Love it. What's your most humorous story on the track?
Oh, that would definitely have to be my very first. It's humorous now. At the time, it was probably and still is one of the most embarrassing things that I've ever done in a race car. Anyway, I've
Mm.
done a lot of embarrassing things, and now I'm old enough I don't care. But the first time that I ever was in a Top Fuel car at an NHRA national event, might as well give the whole backstory. So how I ended up in a Top Fuel car, I'm gonna make this real short. Very dear friend of mine named Raymond King. He was vice president of TCI Automotive Transmission Company out of Ashland,
Mhm.
Mississippi, now owned by Edelbrock and Comp Cams. But Raymond was vice president there, kind of took me under his wing. TCI was purchased by the Felpro Gasket Company, which everybody watching this obviously knows Felpro Gaskets. It was owned at the time by the Lehman family, started by the Lehman family. Peter Lehman bought into my dream and eventually bought a Top Fuel team. And that's how I ended up with where I'm at in the story I'm fixing to tell you. So one weekend, I got my Top Fuel license. The following weekend was the opening first ever national event at Route 66 Raceway in Joliet, Illinois. And because I had just got my license, they are going to send me out on a single. And I also might add that Peter had put together a deal with the Chicago White Sox. So here we are, Route 66 National, Joliet, Illinois, Chicago White Sox plastered all over the side of this car. Brand new driver. So they send me out. I'm the first Top Fuel car ever to pull on the property to do a burnout. And without all the details, I promptly did a burnout going backwards. And thank goodness it broke the reverser before I made it all the way back to the starting line. And
Oh, man.
at that point, I had quit my job just a few days before at the Kroger food warehouse. And I immediately began thinking, I wonder if I can get my job back and keep my seniority. And luckily, I stuck with it, finished the weekend out, made my first 4-second quarter mile run, and we were off and running at that point. It wasn't easy, but we were definitely off and running.
Love
And
it.
I cannot even imagine being ready, doing a burnout, and instantly you're going backwards, and you just the reaction
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and racing, drag racing is all about reaction time. And Clay, you had shared with me with one of our trips a little bit about really what happens at the office, what happens, in these cars, 3.5 seconds, and now what are y'all doing to us? You're even reducing that from 3.5 down to 3.25 seconds. But can you share with everybody listening really what transpires in that 3.5 seconds?
Well, for me, now that I've made a few thousand runs,
Mm.
literally in a Top Fuel dragster, I mean, this is my 26th year of driving these things.
Mm.
Started in 98. Is that right? Or would that be 27, wouldn't it? Y'all help me
98,
with
yeah.
math here.
Yeah.
Yes. So 27th year. Yeah. Anyway, now that I've made this many runs, for me, it is the most peaceful spot that I can find.
Okay.
When that helmet goes on, everything is just like, yep, this is where I'm supposed to be at that moment, because we all got all these voices in our head. We need to do this. We got to do that. We got to call this, all these things. Everybody has all these things happening in their head. And when I put that helmet on, it starts to kind of dwindle down, and it's like, I get to do what I want to do, and that's go fast. And so back to your real question, when they clear the engine out, basically before they start a Top Fuel car, every time they'll stick their finger in there and spin it. And when that starter gets hit, no ignition on, no fuel, no nothing. When it just spins the motor over, clears the engine out, at that moment, you better have your game face on, because what's coming next is 12,000 horsepower.
Oh.
When that thing fires up and you feel that rumble all through you, for me, I always say you drive these things with your butt. I hope we can say that on this. But
Oh, yeah.
anyway, you drive them with your butt. So immediately for me, I'm getting feedback from my butt that, yep, it's idling good, feels good. My hearing sucks, but I still use it. Yep, sounds good. And I have a few adjustments I have to make. I adjust fuel flow, obviously. I make sure we got oil pressure, all those sort of things. A lot of drivers don't do any of this anymore, but I've done this for so long, I still do all the things that I've always done. So once I know call it a systems check, that everything is good to go, Jimmo, my crew chief, gives me the signal to roll forward to do the burnout. Man, there's just nothing like it. You start easing that clutch out and you roll through that water. And I got Blaine Mullican, not Millican, Mullican. He's out front. When I roll through that water, I see him give me the hit it sign. And man, when you hit the throttle to do those big, nasty burnouts, which by the way is only 125 thousandths of throttle, by the way, that's all there is. But
Oh.
when the thing is just ripping the tires off, getting them heated up, and when you step off the throttle and you feel that thing grab, and you maybe sometimes you hear it actually chirp the tire, man, it's just so awesome. But the rest of the process, of backing up and you got guys back there cleaning the tires. Believe it or not, even with that thing vibrating and everything happening, I can feel them pats on the tire as they're kind of slapping them and cleaning them off. And you pull back forward. Blaine's the same guy doing that. When I pull back forward, he tells me to stop. At that point, I'm doing two things. And of course, I YouTube everything. Y'all can go watch my YouTube channel. And there's a camera looking at me. And of course, I've got a camera looking forward. But if you look at that camera looking at me, I edit the video, so I see this all the time. I watch my eyes, what they're doing. It's like, look at the dash, look over for Jimmo. Look at the dash, look for Jimmo, and all that is I know he's making his final adjustments. And I really don't need to look for Jimmo, but I just do because I love what he does when it's time to go. But once I see the fuel flow go way up, I know he's made his final adjustment, and I'll look over and he just pounds the window and the side of the roll cage, telling me it's time to go. And at that point, close the visor. And if you've ever watched the movie For the Love of the Game, Kevin Costner, where he's an old pitcher, I'm now an old race car driver, he's an old pitcher, and he'll say to himself, clear the mechanism. And if he can make all the noise go away, for me, it's noise of the race car, obviously, and I'm not trying to make that go away. But just to make all those freaking crazy little talking going on in my head just go away. And when you do that and you roll in, turn the top bulb on, you reach over, you turn the fuel lever from partially on to all the way on. And then one of the weird things about a top fuel car is you have driven this car through the burnout, backing up just like a normal stick car, just like that 63 Dodge truck I had 3-speed on the tree. You're using that clutch just like a Toyota Corolla. But when you turn that top bulb on, it does have a handbrake, so I'm making a handbrake signal here. You get a handful of brake, and you take your foot off the clutch at that point. So the car's now sitting there running with your foot off the clutch, and you'll finish staging the car just by bumping it in, we call it. And so once you've done that, now your focus completely turns to the Christmas tree. And man, when that tree flashes, and my tagline is stomp on that loud pedal. And that's what you do. You stomp on the gas pedal as absolutely quickly and as hard as you can, and you're off and running. And man, the feeling of that is unlike anything that I've ever done. And I've got to do a lot of unbelievably cool things, including riding with the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. But the acceleration of that car, never found anything even close to it. I mean, the moment you touch that throttle, we're talking 4.5 Gs. So that acceleration is just pushing your chest and your head. You're just smashed in the seat. And the crazy part about these cars, I might as well give this number, 0 to 100 miles an hour in 0.8. 0.8 of a second, this thing's going 100 miles an hour. So once you've passed 60 foot and that first 100 miles an hour, the G's actually continue to go up. A lot of people think, most cars, when you stand on it, you get that hit when you leave and then it kind of tapers off. This actually continues to go up. So 300 to 400 foot or so into the run, this thing's now going basically 300 miles an hour. in less than 3 seconds, it's going 300 miles an hour. And the G's are now on a good run. They're 6.5 and sometimes a little more. So you've now passed what we call half track and you're going over 300 miles an hour. And at that point, once, if everything's going perfectly, you are making little baby adjustments, keeping the car straight. And David, you've watched them from behind. Vic, I don't know if you've ever been directly behind them, but they don't want to go straight. These
Yeah.
things are dancing like crazy. But once you kind of get past that 300 to 400 foot mark, your attention then kind of really goes to, okay, it's not going to shake the tires. It's not smoking the tires. It should complete this run.
Mhm.
And you're just focused on where you're at on the racetrack, making sure you're where the crew chief wanted you to be. And then you're starting to reach over for the parachutes. So the way I do it, I follow the cones down the racetrack. For those of y'all that don't know, there's orange foam blocks in the racetrack that are incremental markers, 60 foot, 330 foot, mile an hour for half track, actual half track, mile an hour finish line. That's the cones. As I'm approaching that mile an hour light at the finish line, I will actually reach over and just simply push a lever forward, and that releases the parachutes. Parachutes are 14 foot long. So by the time at 330 plus miles an hour, by the time you've reached the finish line, which is only about this long, is time to step off the gas. You'll feel the chutes hit. And when those chutes hit, if you didn't have your belts on, it would literally just throw you out of the car because these numbers are all over the place. The numbers for positive G's are very, very set in stone because it's how fast the car accelerates. But according to how the driver opens the chutes, how close it is to when they blossom for when you've stepped off the throttle, that's why these numbers vary. But you're looking anywhere from a -4 to 5 negative G's, sometimes up to 11 negative G's.
Ooh.
And those hurt. Trust me, they hurt. They put Big Daddy Don Garlits out of drag racing. He detached a retina from parachutes opening.
Mm.
Joe Amato essentially retired from neck problems because he drove at a time before there was a Hans device trying to hold his head from going forward. I do none of that. When the chutes are coming open, I know they're going to hit, and our eyeballs do not have muscles for going forward, so I squint.
Mm.
Like when I know them chutes are coming, I just squint. And I tell people this that imagine you're going to get hit by your buddy in the shoulder and you kind of tense up. Well, that's what you do when you hit that chute handle. You're waiting because you know it's coming. And then if everything went good, you're like, okay, chutes are open. Sometimes the car wants to bounce a little bit. There's, all these things going on, slowing down. If it's a long racetrack, no big deal. If you're at Pomona, California, or where we're going this coming week, Reading, Pennsylvania, you don't have a lot of room. So you got to do everything properly. The chutes have hit. Once they've hit, you start to apply the brakes. You don't just put them on, you apply them. In other words, you want this tire that was all out of round going down the racetrack, you want it to settle back down and actually become round again because the tires are not round going down the racetrack. They're D-shaped. But once that's happened, and this is another thing I laugh about, you'll see the time pop up on the scoreboard, and I can see that, by the way, as I'm
Wow.
driving by it. Most of the time, I know what our ET is, but I'm already past it before the mile an hour pops up. But the team will turn around and they're walking away. Well, for us as drivers, a lot of times that's the most exciting part of the run. If the car's bouncing, it's trying to get sideways, it don't want to stop. But the team's like, okay, we've done our job. It's up to him now to get the thing stopped, make the corner down there. But man, I don't know if I answered anything, but I just give you a real quick, maybe it wasn't quick, but I just gave you what it's like for me going down the racetrack.
Oh, I love it. It's funny. I've worked with Tommy Grove, a funny car driver, years ago, and I did what your crew chief did. In fact, I don't know if you noticed that picture up over my shoulder, that's me starting his funny car. And I had appreciation for what goes on, your crew chief does on the line. Never really got into the mindset of what is it like to go down the track like you just described. And it's just so cool how detailed you were. And I never thought about the squint. I knew about the negative G's for Big Daddy.
Yep. Yep.
And, but the fact that you'll squint just to keep them in, that's wild.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just, again, made so many runs now. It is a it's a program in my brain. It's a
Right.
program of what needs to happen, what needs to go on, but they still surprise you. Even after thousands of runs, every run, sometimes they'll give you something a little different look, a little different
Hmm.
feel,
Hmm.
and so you don't have time to think about it. You react to it. And again, that goes back to what I refer to all the time. It's the buttometer. Your butt's telling you what's happening, and you listen to the buttometer. If you think about it, you're too late, but it is basically a mindset and a program. We all have these programs in our brain. Both of you guys can leave your office and head to the grocery store, and you don't think about it. It just happens. And that's
Right.
kind of what it's like driving the car. And the more I keep referencing, all the thoughts in your brain, of all those things going on. I read a lot of books and I study a lot of things. It's been explained to me a couple different ways, but one of my favorites to think about, trying to get to that program where things just happen. And as we get older, people say your reaction times slow down. And that's not necessarily a physical thing.
Hmm.
Think of your brain as a box. I'm
Okay.
just going to use box for an example. When you're a kid, I'm gonna use a name here. Kid named Justin Ashley. He's killing everybody on reaction times right now, including me. He beat me at the final round earlier this year at Norwalk, Ohio, on a hole shot. I had a
Mm.
good night, but nowhere near good enough. So back to this box. The box is your brain. And the older you get, this happens more and more. So when you're a young kid like Justin Ashley, you're thinking about race car. I don't know what order, and I'm just making this up. Race car, cool car you drive, girlfriend. That's kind of it. So those are three arrows in that box. Boop, boop, boop. He's got three arrows in there. All right, now let's move to the old guy, me, wife, kids, house note, insurance for the cars, health insurance, light bill, gas bill, water bill, boop, 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 boop. Arrows start popping in. I got to make sure I've got all of my social media posts done so Parks Plus is happy. Boom, another arrow in the box. Ooh, I got to do a YouTube video this week and it needs to be really good. Ooh, another arrow in the box. See where I'm headed with this? Everything you do to keep life moving the way you need it to go. In other words, all the bills are paid, everybody's got food to eat. The arrows start coming in. Back to the Kevin Costner movie, Clear the Mechanism. Make those things go away. Get those arrows backed out just long enough to stop on that loud pedal and do your job that pays for all those things and half of those arrows that are stuck in your brain because you're an old guy and you've allowed those things to get in there. And right back to the other part of what I just told you guys about when they hit that starter button and I've got my helmet on and start popping those things out of the way for just a moment. Or I try to. And you can see it when it happens. Reaction time's good, card wins rounds, we win races. That's
Right.
just how it goes. But we continue to get those things as we move through life. And we have to do that because that's how we take care of our family. But to be the best of the best, you got to figure out a way to remove that. I don't know if any of this makes any sense what I'm saying. I'm just giving y'all kind of what happens to me in the race car.
Well, if you talk, you basically what I'm hearing you say is focus. It becomes more.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to focus, but you've got to focus. So, share with our listeners a strategy that you've developed to focus.
100%. One of the strategies that I imply all the time, and people comment about this, win, lose, no matter what, I get out of the car smiling.
Right.
I am doing what I wanted to do. And I just got beat on a hole shot by a young, good looking kid named Justin Ashley in the final round of the race at Summit Motorsports Park. And I'm still smiling. And you know what? Because I got to drive a race car today. Even and the hard part of it is, when you do lose on a whole shot or you drove it out of the groove and smoked the tires, the hard part is going back and looking at your team, but being man enough to say, it's my fault.
Right.
I wish more people would say, did that, it's my fault.
Right.
Don't give me an excuse. If you messed up, just say it's my fault. And so that's what I try to do, but I'm still going to smile. And how do I get to that focus point was your question.
Mhm.
Just knowing that I am doing what I've wanted to do when I was a however old little kid at Lakeland Dragway watching Big Daddy Don Garlits drive a Top Fuel car. I get to do that.
And that wraps up part one with Clay Millican. We heard how a kid from a tiny Tennessee grocery store found his lane and never lifted. In part two, Clay gets practical and personal. He spotlights the people who opened doors for him, like Raymond King, Peter Lehman, and Steve Tucker, and how partnerships with Pronto, Parts Plus, and Rick Ware Racing turn race days into unforgettable experiences for technicians and service center teams. You'll also hear what really goes into winning in Top Fuel, from the crew count to the majors they won and one race still on the bucket list. There's humor and heart, too. David pulled Clay aside before his first solo NASCAR run with some unforgettable advice. He told Clay, remember to turn left, and why 12,000 horsepower humbles everyone at the line. And Clay opens up about one of the most moving encounters of his life. A father who was inspired by Clay's story to rebuild her Mustang in her memory. From laughter to tears, part two is packed with mentors, moments, and meaning that fuel Clay Millican. Follow us and roll straight into part two.